Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Castabras. My name is Christian Cawley. He's called James McLean. He's significantly more intelligent than me, but we kind of get by. And we're here to talk about Doctor Who vaguely, and then jump off into other areas, etc. Thank you, everyone who's enjoyed. I assume you've enjoyed it because you've watched a lot of it. Our chat about the Doctor Who TV movie recently. Really enjoyed having Brian Terranova on with us, and hoping to do some more chats like that again in the future. James, I don't want to get bogged down by the TV movie because obviously we're going to be talking about some different stuff today. But I mean, that was a nice experience, wasn't it? It was good to do.
Yeah, I mean, I experienced it in a far more intelligent way than you did, but it was yeah, I genuinely did enjoy it. It was good. It was good to speak to Brian again. I haven't spoken to Brian in years. It's always refreshing to have a sort of slightly different take. And I was impressed at how, as we said, how well the cinematography held
Mm,
up. Oh
yeah,
yes, yeah,
definitely. So that is available to watch on all of our platforms. I've changed things around. No, James is just learning about this now, as you are. So I've changed a little bit about how we do stuff with the podcast now. So we don't do an early edition of the podcast anymore. So everything
right.
goes out together. And then all this stuff in the Castorabus archive that is kind of, you can join our archive on patreon.com/Castorabus and you can access that stuff there. But all the podcasts go out together across every platform. Like, I don't know, there's probably a description for that, but that's what happens anyway, as of last week. And that's gone quite well. So we're going to continue doing it that way. The quick little bit of housekeeping additional before we kick on with today is the Trial of a Time Lord uh, podcasts. We are going to continue with Mind Warp soon. We had planned to do it today, but it's unseasonably hot in the UK. And, we've gone into this project of watching Trial of a Time Lord with the intention of watching it all, but with the best will in the world, sitting through 90 minutes plus of Mind Warp when the temperature is over 20 degrees, which, that might be mild in some parts of the world, but here it's really warm. So it's not the best way. It feels almost, it could be. Don't get this wrong. I don't want to upset any fans of the writer of the episode or anyone who's in it, but it could be considered torturing for some parts of the world. So we're gonna skip that this week. There's two episodes of the first serial, the what's it called? Mysterious Planet, still to go out. They will just drop randomly over the next few days, so we can just get things back into sync.
So they shouldn't be really after Mind Warp yet. They should be waiting with bated
Yeah, so
breath.
that's because initially I did it, everyone gets it early on
Yeah.
Patreon, and then we've changed around with that, and then the
Okay.
weekly listeners were getting it weekly. So that's why we're going to
Cool.
throw them out.
Cool.
So this week, there's a lot going on in the world of Doctor Who and the surrounding zones. And we'll probably talk about Saturday Night Live at some point, but we're going to talk about AMC first. Because AMC, now, there's this story, which just seems to be backed up in several places, that AMC are going to be distributing Doctor Who. So am I right in thinking AMC is the parent company of BBC America? Is that right?
Yes.
So this would almost be a kind of a restoration of the status quo in terms of Doctor Who's distribution in the USA, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I think basically it means it would probably air. I don't know. Would it air on BBC America? Would it work on one of, you know, somewhere else on the AMC networks? I don't know. I don't think anyone does. Um, but yeah, I think at the moment all we can sort of say is, I mean, it will be on cable in the US potentially. Um, and again, I've not really seen anything with much more detail than that, apart from
No.
what is being announced by various fan orientated spaces,
Yes.
which
Well,
is
we'll come to
fine.
that in a moment. I just want to clarify that the AMC deal appears to be the 2005 to 2022 run of Doctor Who. So that's prior to the 60th anniversary and everything since
Yes.
then.
Yes. So you can go on AMC. Global Media does have its announcement, which is where this is being pulled from.
Yeah.
which was announced on the 14th. That AMC Plus announced that there'll be a new the new exclusive streaming home to 13 seasons. The 2005 to 2022 run begins on June 11th. It will debut on AMC Plus. They've said Doctor Who strengthens AMC Plus's position as destination for premium genre storytelling. Curated franchise is defined by iconic worlds, passionate fan bases, and enduring cultural impact. Sounds like someone's been to the AI and asked for define AMC's current position. Yes, so at the moment, from what we can see, it's sort of sitting in that sort of space, and they're sort of linking that acquisition with its other franchises like The Walking Dead that it's got,
Mm.
Mayfair Witches, Interview the Vampire. It's obviously trying to build a certain brand in that area.
Yeah. 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 So that's that period of Doctor Who accounted for, and then the prior period of Doctor Who. If you're in the US, you can. It's on BritBox, I believe. BritBox. It's BritBox US over there. Uh, Either way, there's nothing in the RTD Plus era in there. So we'll skip through that though, because that's not really the focus of this conversation. And no one really knows what's going on with the next episode of Doctor Who anyway. But James has identified some slightly excited rumours that this means Doctor Who is going to be produced in the United States. It's going to be rebooted. This conversation is happening in May 2026, 30 years after the last time Doctor Who was, went out in America with an American production, with American reboot, etc. It's really weird. And I wonder if maybe they've just like taken that as inspiration, or that, they had that in their mind when they wrote this or whatever.
I think no, I think they've just taken the inspiration from the Disney deal. I
Right,
think
okay.
that's what this is. Is just fans saw that Disney came in with a little more of a financial partnership than just simply a distribution deal in terms of money, and that they're mapping that again and going, okay, so this is on AMC, and say AMC have just taken the acquisition of the 2005 series, and that means that they're now going to buy into Doctor Who, and there could even be, and some sites are speculating that this means that there could be like maybe a soft reboot, or
Mm.
that it will now become an American show, or of course we don't know. Everything's quite exciting, which of course is the language of of a of websites appealing to a fan base which is a bit news starved at the moment and
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
for things to say. But from what you can see at the moment, unless people have inside information, which I don't think they do, I don't see any
No.
evidence at the moment anyone is rushing to. And I don't get any. We don't get any suggestion the BBC is looking to farm out either.
No.
There is an argument that the BBC, I don't know, might feel a bit stung through the Disney
Yes.
deal,
Yeah.
and they've said that their angle at the moment, which could pivot again, obviously, is that, Doctor Who is staying as a British show, that the BBC's proud of. There's no sense that it's looking for partners in that sort of way.
No, no, no. Well, do you know, maybe it's a good time to just reiterate a conversation, or just refresh or revisit a conversation that we've had over the years with regards to Doctor Who, because the we talked about this many, many years ago, back uh, during the Matt Smith era. That Gareth Kavanagh revealed to us conversations that he'd had, that Doctor Who was meant to, you know, be closed in 2008, and then it would return as occasional movies, TV movies. And BBC's obviously been keen on co-production partnerships in order to get funding for Doctor Who. We're at a stage now where even that model, maybe like doing 3 movies a year, that's also something that's become incredibly expensive. If you, in terms of British production companies, British television, if you look at, say, Midsummer Murders, they've got from that in that same period, they were putting about 8 in a production block. Now they're down to 3, 4, 5 in a production block, and they're in a co-production with overseas companies, including what's it called? Is it Acorn in the US or something like that? So the point is, you know, in terms of format, these are completely different shows, but in terms of the demand on the people involved, etc., and the quality that the viewers are expecting from them, there's some similarities there. And I'd I would be very surprised if Doctor Who comes back after Christmas as a series in the sense that we're used to. At the very most, I would expect it to be a seriously cut down series or a reformatted series of mini movies at this stage.
It's hard to say, and I think there's almost a comedy now in watching the industry as a whole try to manage itself. I mean, if you think back, even like 20 years ago, certainly if we go back to pre-digital, there was you were in a wonderfully fairly static space. You've obviously got shifts. There are shifts in consumption. People are looking at video is becoming a bigger thing. Questions about cinemas, viability, we're talking sort of like 80s, 90s. But ultimately, everything is reasonably technologically stable, with things in the future being predicted, square reels in the UK, square aerials for satellite television. There's things there, but nothing
There's one of
massive.
those near me.
Really.
Yeah.
That's antique. But we're now in a space where you can't do that anymore. I mean, you'll see so many people have written on this, Bill Ryan, David Hesmondhalgh, intelligent people, on this whole thing about media being a risky business. And we've talked about this before, that, you put in a lot of money up front, relatively small amount compared in distribution, unless you go absolutely crazy with marketing as they are doing these days. But ultimately, it's an upfront model. You have to put all your money up front. It takes a while to make something, and you're hoping that your fickle taste taste economy that is your market will like what you're doing a year, two, maybe 3 years down the line. You don't now. Now you add to that the fact that the market is so complicated and confusing that they don't even know where they're standing anymore. You've got some very smart people like, as I say, David Hesmondhalgh, if we've talked about him before, Bill Ryan. They've all talked about this idea many, many years ago. It's still current that the media industries are very risky spaces because you have to put a lot of money up front to make something. Something takes a long time to make, and then you don't know what your market taste is going to be at the other end. While other industries, you don't tend to have that long distance and that uncertainty. You can
Right.
kind of guess what sort of cars people are going to want within 3 years' time. You've got a rough idea of that map. With film and television, it's very hard to see, and this has always been the case. People's tastes are very fickle. It's very expensive to make, and then it takes a long time to make. And by the time you've made it and your market research and what people are going to like is out of date, it's all go out the window. So that's always been the case. But now you're in a case where the market doesn't even know what the market is anymore. Everything is shifting massively. If you think even like when streaming came in 2013, things were still relatively stable. But now, the shifts in tastes, the sort of, as I say, kind of almost like there's a taste economy which has occurred around critical reception. You've got forces on the internet pushing and shifting taste in different direction. You can see while once before you just have to worry about newspaper reviews, now you've got to worry ahead of time of the push of these big names on the internet. Now we sort of say, well, it's just the internet, and I'm not even going to give names to some of the are in our area and give them a platform. But there's lots of big names which we all know of in our area, and they carry a lot of weight because people are watching social media more than they do television a lot of the time. So my point is, it's just really difficult to know what to do. I mean, the one that springs to mind at the moment is The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is, has just released. And, initial speculation and the early sort of, they were dropping like 30 minutes that people could see in certain areas. And it was like very, very positive. Now the reception's come back, and there's two things which have come out of it. One is people sort of saying it doesn't do enough to the Star Wars universe. It's too standalone and doesn't do anything. And other people going, why is this a film? Why is this not like a six-part story?
Hmm. Yeah.
Someone was arguing on the internet the other day, which I thought was a really salient point. Mandalorian was built to last. you've got a main character which is played by a stuntman. You've got a puppet as your second lead character. You've got stories which don't really matter to know the rest of the Star Wars universe, just a Western. You should be doing this perpetually. Why are you doing standalone films? It's not
Yeah.
part of, because they don't really know what to do anymore because
I
everything is confusing.
I have thoughts about this. Well, a minor thought about the Mandalorian movie is that my initial reason was reaction was why, largely along the lines of what you just said. Then I saw the
Why?
trailer and I thought it looked great from a trailer point of view. Then I saw the extended sort of intro clip trailer thing that was released a few days ago, I should say, before the movie came out. And it struck me that it didn't feel any more cinematic than the TV show itself does. And maybe there's a problem there in having a TV show, whether it's that or Andor or something completely different from a completely different franchise. Having something that looks cinematic already, when you're then making the move to cinema, you're already at a disadvantage, aren't you?
Well, I think also there's people have argued of late, and people argue about this all the time, is that there's been like a flattening in terms of aesthetic, which has occurred across TV and film, but in particular, I
Yeah.
think in TV. And they sort of, and again, if we go back to the Doctor Who 1996, as I say, cinematography is very rich. You've got lots of contrast, lots of color. People say these days there's a lot more of a sort of flattening of color, and is it a stylistic thing? Is it because of the way that we use digital, how we make films? But there is a difference, and you're right. There is a sort of sense in a weird thing. Well, in the 90s, television tried to emulate film. Now it kind of feels like when it goes to film, it's almost an emulation of what we see on
Yeah.
television because
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
so you yeah, absolutely. It's such a confusing space, I think, to navigate as even like big global companies. And obviously where they were when they sort of initially sort of had this idea of doing the Mandalorian movie, which was years ago, is different to where the market is now and the issues they've had in between. And as people are saying, arguing now, which I think is a quite fair argument, is that Star Wars has become, through the choices of the parent company, a television show. That is where people perceive Star Wars. They do not perceive it as a film franchise anymore. So you don't have that event energy because people are used to seeing it on television. So when suddenly now as a film, it feels almost like the Ewok films or something. It feels like, do you know what I mean? It just feels like an extension of something. It's like, or a comic.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's in its home anymore. It feels, I'm watching a trailer. It really feels like Star Wars is not home at the movies. It feels like this should be a TV show, which is
Yeah.
nothing against the story or the quality. I love TV. So to me, that's great. So going back to Doctor Who, where is it next year? I don't think anyone can really tell where it should be anymore. And I think that's a real problem for the industry. And it's becoming a more expensive industry now as well, more sort of global. It's really hard to work out. And this goes back to, I'm just going to throw this out here. There was a writer, now this is like again 26 years ago, who wrote about a book about called John Ellis, who wrote this book about television and the sort of instability of television. But in his book, he categorized it into three ages, which was the age of scarcity, where you had like very few channels, and TV was kind of like fully in control. And then you sort of at the age of availability, you get to the 80s and suddenly like there's more choice, there's more, cable channels are growing in the US. It's becoming more of a competitive market. Audiences are beginning to fragment. And then he sort of says you get to the age of uncertainty by 2000, where you're sort of getting a sort of like a continuous flow of content. Like news is 24 hours. Everything has to be out there. And I think then you get to sort of like this sort of like an age of, I guess you get to a point of age of streaming, more perhaps I think one of my colleagues said the other day, actually, it's like the age of consumption, where
Right.
we are just consuming, we can consume, suddenly streaming appears. I would say we're now, as I said to you earlier, age of suffocation, where there's just so much media, we just don't know what to do with it. And the people making the media don't know what to do with it. Because how do you stand out anymore? Where do you put this? As you say, if we make these into movies, which seemed like when we talked about this Like 10 years ago with Brian, we'd sort of say, well, maybe the next thing they should do is go into like a mini, like a mini series format. I don't know whether that work anymore because you would just disappear. People wouldn't see you. Would people really notice? Would the fan websites report that much on, like a standalone thing every once in a while? Do you actually need a run of something to become meaningful and noticeable? And then can you afford that? It's a really difficult conundrum, I
Is
think.
is this then because we do seem to live in a age of dominated by the rule of or the law of unforeseen consequences, largely in politics, but I think it goes wider than that. Is that what's happening here? Is the internet, the democratization of content generation, is that causing this? Because you're saying that it's difficult to stand out because I mean, you and I aren't particularly standing out, but people at the same level of us, through
Yeah.
YouTube and other platforms, they're standing out.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you've got a young market which is not really tapping into the stuff which is not tapping into the model of how these things are made.
Yeah,
So they're losing that. I mean, we've said this 1,000 times before. I still think one of the problems Doctor Who has now, which it's never had before, is it can't regenerate its audience. While
yeah,
before there was there was a cycle of life of Doctor Who where young people would come into it and become eventually the older people who'd have kids who then have young people against Doctor Who. Young people aren't watching television in the same way, so you're not building that base anymore to justify the money because there's just so much out there, and you
yeah,
just that to me, and again, people, as I've said 1,000 times before, people look at those audience numbers for Doctor Who, but they're just not factoring in the competition Doctor Who has now compared to where it had even in 2013, let
yeah,
alone in 2008, where they would think you could make it into, like, as you were saying, going back to the original point, into like mini movies over here and maybe an American arm of the spin-off over there.
yep,
We're
yeah,
just, I don't know what you do in this. I feel their frustration, and I feel the frustration that fans are a little less sympathetic to the fact that this is a really difficult space now for a show like Doctor Who to exist. It's not a show which is meant to have mass appeal. It's really hard now. And even shows like Mandalorian, which are made for mass appeal in a weird way as well. As we've said, I think, recent studies have sort of put Mandalorian as being popular with Gen Z and boomers, with Gen Z liking Grogu and boomers liking the paternal element of the Mandalorian, and
mm,
Gen Millennials and Gen X being more Andor fans. But you can see that there are some markets there, but it's still hard. It doesn't necessarily win. Put it in the cinema, people go, "Oh, it's a great TV show. Star Wars put it in the cinema," which is probably the arguments they had at the time. We want a cinema hit. This is amazing, done amazing for us on Disney Plus. Good prestige, good numbers, good value. Let's put it on America, and it gets on there, and everyone's going, "Oh well, look at this. It's just a TV show, isn't it?"
yep,
And we've waited 3 years. We're bored waiting. We've gone on to other things.
yep, yep.
How I don't know what the answer is here. It's just a really interesting question. I don't know where it's all going to go unless it all becomes very cheap, short content. There could
Yes.
be an argument that Doctor Who's 20-minute format, maybe as a vertical, would be the next way forward.
Yeah.
Because does that hit what audience? Would that hit audience reach? Would it hit audiences' attention spans? Are we
Now,
moving away from that prestige model?
I mean, obviously that's like the popular length for sitcoms as well. And I think I can't remember what it was called, that thing that Peter Serafinowicz did on Amazon, the superhero, The Tick. Was it The Tick?
Oh yeah, tick.
Those were 20-minute episodes as well.
Yeah, we have seen some examples of like the shorter,
Yeah.
and they work. I think it is funny that we got into a point where drama followed the American model across the world as being like 45 minutes to allow for adverts for an hour slot. And now we're in a place is like, is that model actually outdated?
Mm.
And if it is, how does that change things? As our generation becomes more and more, well, we say we're becoming more and more outdated, but we've got several decades left to go in terms of being a market. So we're not that outdated. But yeah, it's funny to be in a position to be turning around now and going, is Doctor Who's old format, which fans have cried for years,
Mm.
actually now a viable format? Is it the sort of thing that would work in terms of cost? Is it the times, and depending on where you aired it, um, there's that horrible feeling that everything's going to graduate to YouTube and thus become the power of Google, which is not
Yeah.
a wonderful thing. But that is where tech has managed to steer its Pied Piper, its younger audience. So is that the space where everyone's going to end up going? Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know.
Yes.
So maybe
No.
that is where we'd go. 20-minute audience, 20-minute Doctor Who episodes, 10-minute Doctor Who episodes, twice a week, something like that. Is that the way to do we? And yet at the same time, podcasting culture doesn't tend to be 20-minute episodes, interestingly. If you look at
No. Yeah. Yeah.
podcasts, they tend to be sizably longer
Yeah.
and
Increasingly
increasingly
sizably
longer.
longer. Yeah. Yeah.
And yet, sadly enough, I don't feel that the drama podcasts, so for like Doctor Who, as it already has its audio form, would particularly win in that space either. Um, yeah, so I think what I would say to fans is just, while you're getting Doctor Who, enjoy it, because there could become a point where, I mean, obviously it's a big brand for the BBC still, but where we're even looking at where will the BBC be in 4 5 years time? What will
Yeah.
that look like? Does that question, what will Doctor Who look like, or will it look like anything at all? Is it just like an old man show now?
Could well be. It could be very different in both cases. Yes. Let's move on from that, and because it is a topic that we come back to again and again and again, and we invariably, inevitably
But it is
will.
it is one of the most interesting topics because
Well,
it
it
doesn't
is.
just
Yeah,
speak to
absolutely
Doctor Who,
is.
it
Yeah.
speaks to the landscape of what we talk
Yeah. No,
about.
no, I think you're absolutely right. Not just what we talk about, it has an effect on the wider landscape of everything
Yeah.
as well. Not necessarily Doctor Who, but the the production companies and the techniques and the marketing and the format of everything that goes into that. It has impacts across everything really. And are you just wind back it though? Are you planning to see the Mandalorian and Grogu movie?
I had, and I'd forgotten it's pretty much out now, and I have not got any plans to,
Okay.
I would like to see it.
Yeah. I have
I've
a
been
feeling I might wait until it hits Disney Plus. I think my son is planning to see it with some friends soon. But yeah, I'd forgotten about it in terms of it being a
Yeah,
movie. That's maybe another aspect to this as well.
but I think I would quite like to see it as a movie, just
Yeah,
because I haven't really been to the cinema for a long time, because I do the same. And again, this is about the age of suffocation.
yeah,
There's just so many things to see, to actually find the energy. And of course, it's not cheap to go to cinema to watch a
no.
singular thing. I find difficult in my day, which, as we said, and we've not even talked about the cluster of things like video games, which have become longer and longer. I've been playing a couple of video games. Some of the Bethesda, I can't say Bethesda. Stupid.
Bethesda?
Thank you. And you can be going on there 300, 900 hours longer, depending on what you do, what mod you put in. Um, where you think back to 1997, where they were saying Final Fantasy VII, you can play 60 hours on this. If you
Yeah, yeah.
work hard, if you do it properly, 60 hours, maybe 100 if you do absolutely everything. And that was it. But now you've got multiple games, all of them well over, especially if you're playing sort of like Stardew Valley and sort of cozy gaming, that competes with people's time to go and see The Mandalorian or watch a
Yeah, yeah,
TV show.
yeah. I've played Red Dead Redemption 2 on the Xbox. I can't tell you how long I've played it on the
Yeah,
Xbox, but I
it's
completed it. I'm now playing it on the Steam Deck. I've already accumulated over 200 hours, and I
and
haven't got
you're
very far through it.
and you're a family man. So
It's
you've got
yeah,
that on top. So
yeah.
it goes back to the point is where does so much stuff exist? Is it ending up going to be like a survival of the fittest, which invariably will be Disney and a few others, which and people then will argue, is it survival of the fittest, the survival of the bland? Is it going to be, the stuff which again goes back to the broadcasting model? So it's not necessarily who, well, maybe it is. If you can't manage to sustain stuff through advertising as narrow casting is always done, do you end up going to just making things which are fairly bland but have broad appeal? because that's the only way you can capture enough audiences in an era which is just with so much stuff. Something's got to pop, surely. A bubble has to pop at some point, and that worries me a little bit because
Yeah.
what does that mean we end up watching? Do we end up just watching YouTube content? And I think the final point on this, which I think the sad thing is that yes, a lot of young people are very much they're habitually connected to YouTube primarily, but also TikTok and short form content. And we see the rise of verticals, short forms in the States and in China, and we'll see it here soon enough. But it's a bit of me which is feels like those people still actually watch long form as well. But the problem is, and it's not their fault, they're not supporting that industry. Their viewing habits are kind of eroding it, but they
Yeah.
need it, I think, because I don't think there's only so much short form you can digest before you need something with a little more depth. But if the money's not going into the places to make things with a little more depth, because money is now being focused and being made in these shorter attention spaces, I think that's a concern as well. But I just don't know what we do about it. And it's no one's fault.
We do have a bit more to talk about today on different topics, but I
Yes.
would just want to spin this round into something else because I was just thinking about a Twitter X account I follow shared. No, actually, no, it wasn't that. No, it was actually no.
Sorry, just quickly, isn't that still bizarre that so many years after that acquisition, it doesn't have a name still. It's still
Yeah,
known as Twitter X,
yeah.
one of the biggest platforms, and no one knows what it is.
I'll tell you what it was actually. It was an article by the former Doctor Who writer Gareth Roberts, who we won't go into detail as to other things he's written about, but he's written an article, I think, about the Australian Are You Being Served?
Right.
Now, during the 1980s, there was an Australian Two Ronnies as well. The Two Ronnies went to Australia, did a series. Okay, there's an Are You Being Served with John Inman, and then a cast and a set that are identical to Grace Brothers, even directed by Bob Spires. Okay, the whole it's basically John Inman, him, and then a bunch of lookalikes. It's a very odd thing. And then I was thinking of the Japanese Spider-Man. And
Yeah.
then winding this back to our notion of the where we came into this with like an American Doctor Who, it's not completely alien to the way television goes that could actually happen, is it?
No, absolutely. I mean, as you've said before, life on Mars, which is so bizarre to
Yes.
see it not being really Lazarus not going ahead when you see that it's being sold to South Korea, to Russia, to America, these different iterations of life on Mars. And as you say, you've got these different formats, dramas being reformatted for different cultures, which again is wild. And yeah, when you were saying that, which is slightly different, I was thinking of that bizarre last series of Wurzel Gummidge where he heads off to
Oh,
Australia.
yeah. I think it
It's
was New Zealand, in fact.
was it New Zealand?
Yeah, I think so.
Might be, yeah, but it's there are some wild things out there. Um, and again, yeah, maybe that's how it will go. Maybe there'll just become a strong focus on local markets,
Mm,
trying to tap into a local zeitgeist and hope that that sort of generates enough money to support the production. I mean, it it doesn't speak well for science fiction. I think that's probably my biggest takeaway at the moment. Stuff which is expensive, which realizing worlds which don't exist tends to be, even
yeah,
with CGI, even with sort of advances in, God forbid, AI and the like. It's always going to be a difficult thing to pull across. Yeah, maybe a local Doctor Who,
maybe.
American Doctor Who would be the way for the franchise to at least sustain itself financially, is by selling off to different countries to do their own versions. I suppose the reason they've never done that is because you want to keep the brand identity of Doctor Who is British. It's
Yeah,
BBC. That's what they want. They don't want there to be a competing American brand for when they try and sell. I'm guessing, but yeah, no, that's a really
yeah.
good point.
It's interesting.
Um,
Okay, if you have any thoughts on any of that, then do let us know. And also, if you know if there is, and James might know this already, I should mention it already. Have they ever dubbed or subtitled The Russian Life on Mars?
I don't know.
I know there was a
I've not
there
seen
was a
it.
project. I know someone started it, but I haven't been able to find it completed. So that was one I was always the most interested in. But anyway, let's move on. Some sad news. We learned a couple of days ago that Michael Keating has passed away. He appeared in Doctor Who in the
Sunmakers.
Sunmakers, yep,
Yeah.
and of course he was a major character as Violet in Blake Seven.
Villa.
Villa, beg your pardon. I'm reading phonetically here, idiot.
You are.
And
As opposed to actually knowing the content of Blake Seven.
yeah, it's not like I've ever watched Blake Seven. Um, but the thing that I didn't know is that he was in EastEnders,
Yeah,
and
he
he's
was in
got 50
EastEnders.
episodes of EastEnders. When did
Yeah.
I mean, I don't watch EastEnders now, but I was definitely watching
It,
EastEnders then, and I don't remember ever seeing him.
wasn't he a priest or a vicar or
Yeah, yeah,
something?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah, that was weird. So I've got sirens in the background, which is distracting me. Um, yeah, there's a line that Villa had, which I always remembered, where he says to one of the characters, "I intend to live forever or die trying," which
yeah, yeah,
was he was meant the character was a cowardly rogue. And in a weird way, I think as a young person, that embedded, and I never imagined him actually passing away. I think because he always looked fairly young as well. He
yeah,
never really
yeah,
changed in looks that much. His voice remained very much the same. So when he did the Big Finish Blake Seven audios, he always sounded like Villa, while the others ended up sounding like older versions, as you do
yeah.
as you get older. But he always sounded like Villa. Yeah, apparently a really nice guy. I think we've said on the podcast before, I had a relative who was in theatre with him, and he was doing a production, and he'd get quite upset when there would be Blake Seven fans there, simply because he felt that it would distract from the play and the performances of his fellow actors, and
Sure.
he really hated that feeling that it wasn't about the fans; it was just simply about respecting his art, his fellow people's work.
Yeah.
So he sounds like he's always quite a nice guy. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you've not seen Blake Seven, it's still pretty much just on BritBox, isn't it? I don't think it's ever sort of gravitated out of that space.
I don't have BritBox
I'm pretty
currently,
sure it's
so
just still on BritBox.
ITVX.
No, it's
Yeah,
not on
is that
ITV.
the ITVX that you subscribe to
Oh
with
yeah, it might be
Wannabe? Is that
unsubscribed to, but that's linked
yeah?
to BritBox, isn't it?
Yes, it
Doesn't
is.
that
Yeah, yeah,
share the
yeah.
same library?
I believe so. Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so it is oddly, and of course DVDs are very expensive these days, but we should all be getting them as a as a
Yes.
finger up to the gatekeeping of streamings. But yeah, it's a great show. If people haven't seen it, I'd always recommend it to any science fiction fan who has not seen Blake Seven. It's in some ways it remains quite reflective of our times because it speaks to the human condition of fear, power, control, you know, regardless of your political standpoint. I think those are things which we all worry about or think about. So yeah, I think it's still got a lot of relevance and he's great in it. He's got some really great lines.
Yes.
Him and Paul Darrow were just a pleasure to watch. Again, sadly passed. There's not many left from Blake Seven now. Jan Chappell and Sally Nivet. I can't think. Uh, have we got both Travises still? Is Brian Croucher still with us? Isn't that a terrible thing to say?
Hmm.
There's very few left. And just reading your thoughts, Sally Nivet, Gisette Simon, um, Glynis Barber,
Yes, of
she's
course.
still doing stuff. Stephen Pacey's still going. So the last two seasons, those people are still largely around, but the original seven, Sally Nivet and Jan Chappell are the only ones left. We lost Gareth
Yeah.
Thomas, Paul Darrow.
Jacqueline Pierce as well.
Yeah. Oh God, my brain is going. Jacqueline Pierce. Clearly, it's not that I don't like the show. It's clearly that it's just the age of saturation, isn't it? There's only so much a brain can take. And
There's
suddenly
only so much a brain can take.
some stuff just ends up leaking out. And Stephen Grief, that
Stephen
was
Grief.
clearly still in there.
Yep.
Uh, Gann is still missing though, unfortunately.
David Jackson.
David Jackson, that was it. Oh, and Peter Tuddenham as well. He's gone as well.
Yes.
Zen Aurak and Slave.
So, so yeah, so that is sad news. So he passed away a couple of days ago. But so yeah, I mean, wheel out your Blake 7 VHS from 1990, whatever it was, or your DVDs. Presumably, you've got a DVD player more likely than a VHS player in this day and age. And yeah, it's a good time to pay a small tribute. The other thing that I wanted to talk to James about was there's a guy in a TV in an old TV show that we don't often talk about. I mean, we do refer to it quite regularly, but there's one person in that TV show that we do tend to kind of focus on from time to time. A man called William Shatner,
Oh, yes. Bill.
and I love William Shatner. I I for many reasons. I love how grouchy he can be with people.
Hmm.
And I love the fact that you don't really like people have attempted to draw him politically, and he doesn't give a fuck. He just ignores them and uh, just sends them on the way with a flea in their ear. He's just like a guy getting on with his life, and I like that. And of course, there's the heavy metal album, isn't there?
Mm.
But he's he's shared his thoughts about a new Magic the Gathering Star Trek
Hmm.
recently. And someone shared with him a tweet, and he says, "I know nothing about it. And this is basically the card of Captain Kirk. Uh, I know nothing about it. I do hope it's a real Wizard's Magic deck, though they should redo the card, as he looks like he didn't have his Kellogg's US Raisin Bran that morning, and will have some trouble boldly going." And yes, the images of Kirk leaning forward in his chair with a slightly tense look on his face.
Hmm.
And there is some suggestion that it might be AI generated in some of the comments as well. Which I mean, I find, I've, I mean, you know more about art than I do. Is that likely? Do you think? Is
Possibly.
Magic the Gathering going to? I mean,
I'd
this is
hope
this.
not.
I mean, that's I mean, because this is a medium that has gained quite a reputation for quite striking artwork throughout its vast range of
Well,
franchises it's worked on.
this is the ultimate. I know we've been here before. The ultimate danger with AI for me is when it's used duplicitly. I think that is the
Mm.
problem.
Yeah, yeah,
People like stuff create artistically. Art tends to be an expression of human endeavor. That's why we like it. We see a picture and we go, that looks nice. I could never do that. I'm really impressed that someone's done that. How have they done that? What does this mean? And that's what starts that question.
sure.
As soon as you've got something which is just replicating that process, it's less interesting. No matter how brilliant it looks, it is less interesting. So when AI becomes art, quite frequently, not always, it's that hidden factor that it's a cost-effective, quick thing to do. You don't want people to know because if they know, it's not just simply they go, I have an issue with AI, it's an ecological issue or whatever, it's taking our jobs, whatever. It's that sense of like, this now means nothing to me. This feels nothing.
Yes.
So I think it is frustrating when we have that question with brands which are known for creative material. And I hope they haven't gone down this route because I think it is a danger to a brand because brands do get hit because people don't like feeling duped. And I think that's the bottom line. It's not about whether, oh, well, are AI artists or are the AI artists who create AI art and all this. No, because when people know that, they disassociate from the work. So it's not
Yeah, yeah,
artwork.
yeah, yeah.
And it's the same with writing as well, as we know and as the whole point of it, as soon as it's used duplicitly, because we know it is, because we know if people actually post that this has been written by AI or been drawn by AI, they know that there's going to be a drop in people reading or people engaging with it.
Yes.
And that is the issue here. And
Yeah.
I hope Magic the Gathering hasn't made that error. I'd like to think they haven't. And we have seen a rise of people declaring stuff as AI artwork, and then actually the artist coming out and going, actually, no, I can prove this was me. I was commissioned to do this. It's not AI art. I just do art which looks good, and it could be look like AI. So sometimes there is that mistake that's being
There
made.
is, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, we we
I
we
think
want we want authenticity.
we do, and the problem is it's increasingly difficult to get authenticity. I know there are people, and there may be a few who are listening who aren't entirely certain about what AI is, and maybe they have seen it and don't know. Certainly, the older listeners among us. I have been working on a project with Tech Radar recently, in which I investigated some no-code platforms. These are AI systems, so like you've got a standard prompt box in the middle of the screen, as you would with a Google search or with an AI tool like Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever, and you type in a prompt, you enter a prompt in plain English of what you want your piece of software to do. Okay, so I used a standardized prompt that would create the same program, a web app across multiple platforms. And it is increasingly easy, they're increasingly fast, and it is incredibly simple to do. And what you then have is a piece of software that's essentially bootstrapping another piece of software, creating it from scratch, importing a bunch of libraries and stuff. So you get to this state basically where you've created, in the same way that you would create search results, basically, a piece of software. And
Mm.
now some of these platforms will let you dig in and edit the code and share it on GitHub and work with other people, collaborate, etc. But the fact remains is that it's incredibly simple to do. And I mean, you can take that code and you can then, I mean, potentially you could sell it if it was something interesting and you'd like got some interesting integrations with some data sources. But the point is, it's so simple to do. If a company like, Magic the Gathering is using AI or any other company that is mass producing stuff, then they've saved massively on the creative element. People, artists. The same with programming, creating web apps. You're cutting out people who spent their years creating code, developers, to a point where there's no one creating the code from scratch. Now, it could be argued that there is no one creating the code from scratch. There hasn't been anyone creating code from scratch for a long time because a lot of the code, relies on libraries of established code and processes and loops, etc., that are imported in and then called for things to take place within the new code. But at the same time, we're going to get to, I mean, there is a line here, isn't there, where eventually we're going to end up with the basics of things not being known anymore because
Yeah,
they are stored in libraries. These artistic, I mean, going back to the artistic elements of this, these are there's like databases and libraries and subroutines and programs full of artistic techniques and applications and hues and shade and pressure, all these things, how these things have transpired across real art created by real people, reduced to code, becoming essentially parts of libraries that can then be drawn from the code as a result of a prompt. And eventually we get these there is a risk that these skills are actually lost, isn't there?
definitely. And I've had colleagues who work in digital. I've had arguments with them over this notion that that we can do this. You can do this. You don't need to code. You can do this, and it will generate it. And yes, it's going to change the industry. We're going to need less coders. Um, but ultimately, the problem is that you become, again, it's a reliance factor because the argument is, well, if the code isn't quite right, you can't change it because you
No.
don't understand code or you don't have people there who understand code because you're reliant on it. And then people go, well, but the AI will be able to make the shifts and the changes. But again, you become reliant on an automation that if that automation is no longer there for whatever reason, you're stuck because
Yeah.
you've got no one who can do the graft. And yes, there are arguments. I mean, I've seen arguments of going, yeah, this is just the way the history goes. You look at Photoshop came in and what that did for typography. And yes, but even there you can see it, as we've said before, typography since Photoshop has become as an art form decreasingly skilled
Mhm.
because people using it do not understand the nuances of type and relations as you would if you taught it in the 70s or the 80s. So you do see it degrade, but the difference I still would argue between having a tool and having an automation process
Yeah.
where you're not even needing to pick up a tool. You're just
No,
having
no.
something else do it for you.
Yeah.
And as businesses have always known that as soon as you farm out, it can save you money, but ultimately it puts you at risk because you're no longer reliant on you no longer have control.
Sure.
And I think that's the interesting thing with AI, especially in the business sense. You don't see people talking about in terms of the business discourse you'll see on LinkedIn, that AI is about relinquishing control. And that's a weird thing for businesses to be double downing on and going, this is the hill that we want to die upon, is that we want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
relinquish control for money. And also, again, I mean, this is, everyone's having these arguments at the moment, but to me, again, it comes down to the age of saturation. The more you can pump out, the more you
Yes.
bloat your market, the less your market is valued.
Yeah.
And that is what you're doing. And obviously, on the short, businesses are short term, they're there to make money, they're not thinking about that long term. But ultimately, that's what you're doing because eventually it'll come to a point where, well, we've seen it, haven't we, already to some degree? How many, websites are no longer the thing they were in the 2000s. People
No, no,
don't
yeah.
tend to go to websites because they're all of the same thing.
Samey.
They're all samey. They deliver the same sort of content. And quite often they're just front doors to businesses.
No.
They're
Yeah,
no
yeah,
longer
yeah.
repositories.
Well, I mean, if
So,
you looked at, I mean, I can speak a little bit personally about this. I was previously a deputy editor at makeuseof.com for a good period of time. And during that time, the company that bought Make Use of around 2020, 2021 also bought sites called How to Geek and XDA Developers and Pocket Lint. And that's just in the tech space. They also bought a load of sites like um, Screen Rant and similar sites to that. And now you've got these sites, they all look alike and they're all publishing similar material. It's bizarre. There's no competition between them. There's no kind of drive to do something different between them. There's no looking over your shoulder saying that they're doing that, let's go and do this. They've cut back on. Now, I'm not saying there's any AI involved in here. I know that they do use AI for internal linking and stuff like that. Uh, but there's nothing different between them. They don't have an individual voice anymore. There's less of a culture around these individual sites. And as you've got less of a culture, you got less affection, haven't you?
but
You know,
is that also not a sign of what is the true AI war, which is that the problem for these sites as well is anything they are generating is being scraped by
yeah, yeah, yeah.
search engine AI, which is taking people away from these sites anyway
Yeah,
to
exactly. Yeah,
create
yeah,
summaries,
yeah,
which means there's your AI of competition. People aren't going to those sites
yeah.
anyway because they don't need
Absolutely.
to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And quite frankly, like my mum, who's always very fearful of malware and all that sort of stuff, would far rather rely on an AI prompt on a Google engine than have to click a link.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a weird sort of change in
Well, this
perhaps
is the thing as well.
mentality as well.
We've found ourselves because of generative AI being fearful of AI in terms of writing and art and creating video and creating audio and using or voice cloning and all these other things. Whereas it does have a lot of really useful purposes, such as getting to the answer that you need very quickly, processing large amounts of data, bank statements, for example, or a series of emails, and getting to the bones of what you want to talk about. We're recording this now. There's an AI companion, which I don't think we actually, but it is used, and AI is used within Zoom in order to create a transcription efficiently. So it has purposes and it has legitimate uses, but we're distracted by the whole generative AI element of it, which is causing a lot of the problems. And I don't want to dwell on this too much on this entire topic, but going back to what we were talking about with code and stuff, I was reading recently that the gentlemen who were involved with programming, I think the Pioneer uh, probes in the 1970s, they're all very old now, and they basically used kind of their own code. Okay, there was I think some of the systems at this end used Fortran, which is no programming language, but at the other end, out in space, uh, there's kind of very kind of like there's a word for this. We'll call it niche code, and no one really knows how to communicate with some of the systems on these probes anymore. And these guys retiring, and NASA's basically not trying to replace the knowledge,
But it,
uh, which
no,
seems
sorry.
crazy.
But I was just
So,
thinking, it
yeah,
goes back to science fiction. If we just go back to our base, I guess, I think what is fascinating is it's a sort of thing which things like Doctor Who have predicted for years. This whole notion of when societies automate to the point where no one knows how to manage the automation because no
it's
one
face of
understands
evil,
how the
isn't it?
things, yeah, face of evil, various things where it's like, but it does the things for us, but we can't do things ourselves. We don't know what to do. That whole thing of reducing societies uh, to or creating the monster that no one can control because it is its own thing. And yeah, aside from all the massive fears of AI, and like you can put them on various tiers, issues of creativity, the issues of it within sort of criminal elements as well, the benefits, as you say, in terms of especially for things like science, working through massive data sets where there can be strong benefits. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It is. We do always lose skills. That is always true. We don't. Certain skills become more niche. But I think it's always that question which comes like, do you need it? I think
Yeah.
that's the bottom line. Are these things that need to be automated? And quite often they're not. And when they're being automated, it's either for individual greed or for some or deception. That's where the
Yeah,
problems really
yeah, yeah.
lie. And if how we get around that, I don't know. But it'd be interesting to see where science fiction says we will be in the next 20 years, given where, science fiction said we would be 30 years ago, and we're probably not far away from where it predicted in some cases.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of this week's Castovers. Thank you very much for watching. You can be watching this on YouTube. You could be watching it on Patreon. You could be listening to it the old-fashioned way, like we used to do with podcasts, which is just fortunate for you because it's just me and James talking. There's no visual element apart from that light behind my head that says on air, as if we're some sort of radio station. Imagine. Um, if you've any thoughts on anything we've discussed this week, Michael Keating, Doctor Who AMC. We didn't talk about Saturday Night Live, which maybe we'll talk about another time. I don't know. Or AI and all of that kind of crazy thing, and Doctor Who Down Under, maybe. Let us know. We'll be back next time, and if you've any thoughts on those things, we'll read them out and go deeper on those. Until next time, it's goodbye from us.